All right, so thanks for joining us for what is a follow-up video to the interview that I did with Mr. Growit last week. First of all, I want to say thanks to Mr. Growit. It was a great interview. I kind of felt like as we were talking, that I didn't want to really be a salesperson for, all of my company's products. I wanted to keep it more that grower to grower kind of conversation, which is the whole format of Mr. Growit's podcast. But I did want to shoot this video to come back to a couple of the questions that I thought I had kind of missed some key points as to how our products actually fit into those categories of being able to stress the plants. Obviously, the overall topic of it was how to create really healthy, robust plants so that you can stress them a little bit. So I wanted to take this opportunity to go back over a few of those questions and show you guys how those tie into our products specifically. One of the first questions that would involve this would be what's your style of gardening, indoor, outdoor, soil, cocoa, hydro, organic, synthetic. First, I kind of wanted to talk about, we are an indoor gardening company. Some of our products like Lotus Nutrients can also be used outdoors, but largely indoors is where we've kind of made our niche. I did want to kind of just plug our company SuperCloset, which makes all-in-one hydroponic kits and or soil kits for the home grower. And if you go to supercloset.com, those kits kind of contain everything you need to get growing. So basically what we've done is we've taken all the guesswork out of what components you're going to need and all the little bits and pieces to set up a full grow. So if you're interested in indoor gardening, that's the first place to stop is supercloset.com. In the whole organic and synthetic comment, that I had said back to Mr. Growit in terms of I don't like to use synthetic when describing our nutrients. It's not because, somehow I think that synthetic has this negative connotation around it, but it's because I don't necessarily think that we are classified as a synthetic nutrient. I know that term can be used fairly loosely in the industry, but the way I like to think about it is the components that make up Lotus Nutrients are actually derived from natural materials, right? They aren't synthesized in the way that a good example might be CBD products these days. You have CBD, which is a natural form of a cannabinoid that is extracted or derived from actual cannabis or hemp. Or you also now have on the industry synthetic CBD, which is actually synthesized in a lab. And although it has the same chemical structure as CBD that comes from the plant, you can see how they're completely different. One is a natural derivative from a plant. One is actually synthetically based from a lab. And so everything that we have in our nutrients would be the derived from natural ingredient side of things and not from the synthesized side of things. So that's why I tend to stay away from the word synthesized when describing our nutrients. The second one, he asked me about lighting and what kind of lighting we use. I explained that the X squared is kind of my go-to light to use. And then we started to get into exactly what in lighting can, one, create a healthy base. So when you're talking about PPFD levels and, giving all of the other inputs in correct proportion to the PPFD that you're putting in the plant, right? That's what we're using to create that healthy base. And then certain things that you can do to stress, we touched on UV and IR. So UV and IR are really interesting spectrums to use in the plant stress response. And we actually have those spectrums in our new X series lights. Again, I didn't want to start touting our products left and right on his page, or on his interview rather. So I thought I would do it here in a follow-up interview. All of our X series lights, which are perfect for the home grower. It's what we use in all of our cabinets for SuperCloset and all of our grow tents. Actually has two separate channels on it. It has a full spectrum channel, which is actually truly our targeted spectrum that has a good amount of blue and a good amount of red, and then does have quite a bit of that valley of all the yellows, oranges, and greens. But then it also has a secondary channel that has a few more reds in it, the IR, and the UV. And so what you can do is you can crank that channel up slowly through the flowering stage to introduce UV and IR to that plant, which then affects certain proteins inside that plant or photoreceptors that are largely responsible for that secondary metabolite production. And what you're essentially doing is telling the plant or tricking the plant into thinking that it is having a larger dose of UV than it is adapted to. And so we'll actually send out that secondary metabolite production to start extra trichome production, because in nature, trichomes are a protective layer to that plant. And so it's kicking off those kind of defense responses in response to the additional UV light that you're putting into that spectrum. And so it's super cool. The science on UV, I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg on it. And there are, through all of our trials with UV, there are certain strains that react very clearly to UV light, and there are certain strains that don't act as robustly to that UV light introduction. Sativas seem to be the ones that don't have as heavy of a response, and the more indica-based plants are the ones that do have that response. Could that be a geographical location of where the mother stock of that plant or the genetics of that plant ended up coming from in the beginning? Yeah, it could be. Plants that are more towards the equator might have a higher threshold for UV light than something that comes from, a more northern valley. So UV light is a very interesting one. And then, we also talked about being able to turn spectrums on and off, which you can do with the X squared. I have a lot of commercial clientele that like to turn down all those reds and all those whites in the last, say, 4 or 5 days of the flowering phase, and keep it just a pure blue spectrum, right? It still keeps some photons going to the plant to keep those, metabolic processes going, but it also stresses the plant out because you've just stripped away a lot of its spectral profile. And so it honestly, it stresses the plants, and you can see, again, a lot of trichome production out of that. I have clients that swear they've seen additional swelling because of it. And so I do have a lot of people that play around with spectrums in that way, which is a great thing that you can do with the 3-channel controllability of the X squared. On that same subject, you also hear of people turning off the lights completely in the last 3-4 days of the cycle. Same thing, it's all the same theme. What you're doing is you're giving that plant a drastic change in conditions, which is only going to lead to stress, which is going to lead to it throwing out more secondary metabolite production, and as a result, higher trichomes, higher cannabinoid content, and so forth. So the next question that he asked me was, which nutrients do you use, and do you aim for different EC, PPM during the different stages of growth? So this is where we started to kind of talk about that really high EC range, which isn't necessarily the stressor, but is more kind of that foundation builder for big, huge, healthy plants that you can then do these dry back periods. And it's kind of that drought stress that we were talking about being the stressing component of that. But something that I wanted to touch on when you talk about having really high EC in the plants is that unless you are using something, a nutrient recipe that is very balanced, like Lotus Nutrients is, you can actually do more harm than you can do good. And the reason is because on a smaller scale at lower EC or lower PPM, an unbalanced nutrient program isn't going to show itself as much as it does as you start cranking up into those 3.0 ECs and above. If you have imbalances down at 1.2, 1.3 EC, by the time you get up to 3.0 EC, that imbalance is just going to grow to a drastically higher level. Let's say nitrogen was your spike point down at 1.2, 1.3. By the time you get above 3.0, that nitrogen spike point is going to be much larger, and now you're starting to toy with a possible nitrogen toxicity, and the whole thing can get thrown off. With Lotus Nutrients, what we've made is a nutrient program that is so delicately balanced and so perfectly balanced that you can take it up to those higher thresholds, and know that even when you get above 3.0 and higher, even up into the almost 4.0 range, that all of those components are still going to be available to the plant in the perfect proportions, allowing the plant to get up to those higher ECs and utilize it all as it should without having any spikes or dips in certain parts of that nutrient recipe. So we've found with Lotus Nutrients in particular that our commercial growers and some of our home growers that are really pushing the limits are able to get up to those high ECs and still keep everything in proportionate balance, which then leads to those really big healthy plants that you can then stress with a little bit of drought stress or light stress or what have you. And one last question that I feel like I maybe didn't answer well enough on Mr. Growitt's interview was the last one where he asked where he could find us. I'm new at this whole video blogging scene, so now I can finally do the company plug like I'm supposed to. So you can find us all over online, all of our websites, SuperCloset.com, LotusNutrients.com, KindLEDGrowlights.com, GorillaGrowTent.com, and GrowStrongIndustries.com. On any of those sites, you can find a wealth of information on the product that they pertain to. Grow Strong Industries kind of has everything all in one. And then we also have a rock solid team of growers answering phones. We offer lifetime grow support on any purchase that you make from us, so you can actually get the answers that you need to help you be successful with our products and make top-notch medicine every single time and have big, healthy harvests. You can also find us on all of our social media handles, at Gorilla Grow Tent, at Lotus Nutrients, at KindLED, at GSI, and at, which one did I miss? SuperCloset?
Yeah, they'll be on screen.
Yeah. And at SuperCloset. And you can also find us on our Grow Strong Industries YouTube channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, share as much as you possibly can. And thanks for watching.
I know you hate to do it, but let's tie in like, subscribe, to follow us for more.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna, and you're gonna love it. You're gonna
All right.
fucking love it. Okay.